Zara Lynn pressed her thin body against the cold metal wall of the ventilation shaft. Her heart beat so fast she thought it might explode. The narrow space barely fit her small frame, but it was the only place she could hide on this dead mining station. Her people called her beautiful once. The Velthari were known across the galaxy for their grace. They looked like the deer from ancient Earth stories, but they walked on two legs like humans. Their skin held tiny lights that showed their feelings. Right now, Zara Lynn's markings flashed bright blue. Blue meant fear. She had been afraid for so long that she forgot what other colors looked like. 3 months ago, she lived on Veltar, prime with her family. She worked as a healer in the main city. Her days were filled with helping sick people get better. The Velthari had special gifts. They could heal wounds with their touch and cure diseases that killed other species. It was a good life, a peaceful life. Then the Korthak came. The memory made her stomach hurt. The Korthak Empire wanted to live forever. They found out that Velthari organs could make them young again. So they attacked her world with huge ships and powerful weapons. They killed millions of her people. They took the survivors to prison ships. Zara Lynn touched the scar on her side. The Korthak had cut her open while she was still awake. They wanted to see how her healing organs worked. She escaped when human and Korthak ships started fighting near the prison transport. In the chaos, she stole a small escape pod and flew until she found this empty mining station. That was 2 weeks ago. She had eaten the last of her emergency food yesterday. Her water would run out tomorrow. The deep cut on her leg was getting worse because she was too weak to heal herself properly. Soon she would die here alone and forgotten. But first she had to try one more time to call for help. Zara Lynn crawled through the shaft toward the communication room. Every movement hurt. Her damaged leg dragged behind her, leaving small drops of purple blood on the metal floor. The shaft was so narrow that her shoulders scraped the sides. She knew about this mining station from the computer files she had read. It was called Kepler 7. The company that owned it left 5 years ago when they found better places to dig for minerals. Now it was just floating in space, empty and forgotten like her. The lights in the hall still worked, but most of the air, recycling systems were turned off. Only a few sections had breathable air. Zara Lynn had been living in the old medical bay, sleeping on the examination table and drinking water from the emergency tanks. She reached the end of the shaft and looked down through a grate. The communication room was below her. Banks of computers and screens covered the walls. Most were dark, but some still blinked with tiny lights. If she could get the main transmitter working, she might be able to send a message to any Velthari ships in the area. Her people were survivors. They were hiding on different worlds, trying to rebuild their lives. Some had become merchants. Others worked as healers for alien species who paid well for their services. A few had even joined military groups that fought against the Korthak. Zara Lynn dropped down from the shaft. The fall hurt her bad leg, and she bit her lip to keep from crying out. She crawled to the main communication panel and started pressing buttons. Most of the systems were locked, but her people were good with technology. She had learned basic computer skills in school. The screen flickered to life. Good. The transmitter had power. She started typing a message in her own language, her thin fingers shaking from weakness and hope. This is Zara Lynn Moonwhisper of the Veltar Healing Guild. I am trapped on mining station Kepler 7 in the Outer Rim. I am injured and need rescue. Any Velthari ship, please respond. I am the daughter of Elder Kethmiran Moonwhisper. Please, if anyone can hear this. She stopped typing. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside the room. Someone else was on the station. Zara Lynn's markings blazed with blue terror light. She turned off the communication system and crawled behind a bank of computers. Through the gaps between the machines, she could see the door. The footsteps got closer. They were heavy and steady, like someone wearing thick boots. Not Velthari feet, not Korthak either. They made clicking sounds when they walked. Human footsteps. Zara Lynn had never seen a real human before, but she knew what they were. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They were the monsters that came from the dark worlds near the galaxy's edge. The Korthak told stories about them around their war fires. Humans ate other thinking beings. They used crude weapons and fought, without honor. They showed no mercy to the weak or sick. Their ships were ugly things made of metal and fire. They conquered worlds just to watch them burn. The Korthak said humans were worse than they were. At least the Korthak killed for a reason. To make themselves stronger, humans killed for fun. The footsteps stopped outside the communication room door. Zara Lynn pressed herself against the floor and tried not to breathe. Her markings were flashing so bright that she was sure they would give her away. She put her hands over the glowing spots on her arms, but light leaked between her fingers. The door made a soft hissing sound as it opened. Zara Lynn closed her eyes and waited to die. She had escaped the Korthak harvest ships only to be found by something worse. At least the Korthak wanted her alive so they could use her organs. A human would probably just eat her right here. Maybe it would be quick. Heavy boots walked into the room. They moved around the communication panels, checking the equipment. The person was looking for something. Or someone. Zara Lynn heard electronic beeping sounds. The human was using some kind of scanner. Her people's technology could hide them from most detection systems, but humans were supposed to have very advanced military equipment. The beeping got faster. The scanner was finding her. The footsteps came closer to her hiding spot. Zara Lynn opened her eyes and saw a pair of black boots just a few feet away. She looked up and saw the barrel of a weapon pointing at her face. Above the weapon, she saw the face of death itself. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stepped carefully through the dark halls of the mining station. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor, but he could not help that. The station was supposed to be empty, but his ship's sensors had picked up strange energy readings from this sector. Jake was 28 years old and had been fighting in space for 6 years. His brown hair was cut short like all soldiers, and his green eyes had seen too many battles. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Human Colonial Defense Force. On his chest was a patch that showed Earth and her colonies united under one flag. The patch was new. Jake's old unit had been destroyed 3 months ago in a fight with Korthak raiders. He was the only one who survived when his ship blew up. The doctors said he was lucky. Jake did not feel lucky. He felt empty. His new commanding officer was Captain Lisa Hayes. She was tough but fair, and she understood that Jake needed time to heal from losing his friends. That was why she gave him this solo mission. Check the old mining station for Korthak activity. Simple work that would keep him busy but not put him in too much danger. Jake held his scanner in one hand and his pulse rifle in the other. The scanner showed the station's layout in green lines on a small screen. Most of the rooms were dark and cold, but a few still had power. The air was breathable in about half the station, which was good because Jake's suit only had 4 hours of oxygen. He walked past old mining equipment covered in dust. Giant machines that once dug precious metals from asteroids sat silent and forgotten. Jake felt sad looking at them. Before the war got worse, places like this were full of workers and families. Now they were empty because it was too dangerous to mine so far from protected space. The Korthak Empire had been growing stronger every year. They conquered worlds and enslaved the people who lived there. Worst of all, they had started harvesting other species for their body parts. Jake had seen the harvest ships once, and the memory still gave him nightmares. That was why humans fought so hard against them. Earth's colonies were still young and weak compared to older galactic civilizations, but humans had something that surprised their enemies. They never gave up, even when things looked hopeless. Jake's communicator buzzed softly. He pressed a button on his helmet. "Morrison here," he said quietly. "Jake, this is Captain Hayes. What's your status down there?" The captain's voice was clear despite the distance between the station and their ship. "Station appears empty, Captain. I'm checking the upper levels now. No signs of Korthak presence so far." "Good, but stay alert. Intelligence says they've been using abandoned stations as supply bases. If you find anything suspicious, do not engage, just mark it and get out." "Understood, Captain." Jake turned off the communicator and kept walking. He understood why Captain Hayes was worried. The Korthak were smart enemies. They often left traps in places like this, waiting for humans to investigate. But Jake's scanner was not showing any Korthak technology signatures. He entered a section that still had lights and warm air. This must have been where the station workers lived when the place was active. Jake saw pictures on some walls showing families and friends. Mining work was hard and dangerous, but these people had made a life here. In one room, Jake found a small garden dome. Most of the plants were dead, but a few had survived by growing toward the artificial sun lamps. Some tiny crystalline creatures had made nests among the plants. They looked like living jewels, no bigger than Jake's thumb. Jake walked carefully around the nests. The little creatures were probably the only living things that had called this station home for years. He did not want to disturb them. The scanner beeped softly. Jake looked at the screen and frowned. There was a life sign in the upper levels, but it was very weak. Too weak to be a healthy Korthak warrior. Maybe an injured person was hiding up there. Or maybe it was a trap. Jake moved toward the stairs leading to the communication section. His pulse rifle was ready, but he kept it pointed down. If someone was hurt and hiding, he did not want to scare them more than necessary. The life sign was coming from the communication room. Jake's scanner showed it was small, much smaller than a Korthak. As he got closer, the readings became clearer. Body temperature was low. Heart rate was fast, like someone who was very afraid. Breathing was shallow and weak. This was not a warrior waiting to attack. This was someone who was hurt and scared. Jake reached the communication room door and stopped. He switched his scanner to thermal imaging mode. Through the walls, he could see a small figure hiding behind some computer equipment. The heat signature showed that whoever it was, they were badly injured. One leg was much cooler than the rest of the body, which usually meant serious bleeding. Jake made a decision. He holstered his rifle and activated his suit's medical scanner. Instead, if someone was dying in there, they needed help, not violence. He opened the door slowly and stepped inside. The room was full of old communication equipment, most of it turned off. But Jake noticed that someone had been using the main transmitter recently. It was still warm. "Hello?" Jake said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you. I can see that you're injured. I have medical supplies." No answer. Jake's thermal scanner showed. The figure behind the computers was shaking with fear. Jake took off his helmet and set it on a nearby table. This was dangerous because it made him vulnerable, but he wanted to show that he was not a threat. His face was young and kind, with worry lines around his eyes from too much war. "My name is Jake Morrison," he said in the calmest voice he could manage. "I'm with the Human Defense Force. Are you hurt? I can help you." Still no answer, but the shaking got worse. Jake activated his suit's translation system. Maybe whoever was hiding did not speak his language. The system could handle most known galactic languages, though it was not perfect. He tried again in Galactic Standard, the common language used for trade between different species. "Please, I want to help. You are safe now." A soft sound came from behind the computers. Not words, but a kind of whimper that any species would recognize as pain and fear. Jake's heart felt heavy. Someone was suffering here, and they were too afraid to accept help. He had to find a way to show them he was not their enemy. He sat down on the floor to make himself look smaller and less threatening. Then he took out his emergency medical kit and placed it where the hidden person could see it. "I'm going to stay right here," Jake said gently. "I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, I'll help you. No one is going to hurt you anymore." Jake settled in to wait. Whoever was hiding behind those computers had been through something terrible. The least he could do was give them time to understand that their nightmare was over. He had no idea that he was about to change everything. Both of them thought they knew about the galaxy. Zara Lynn watched the human from her hiding place behind the computers. Her whole body shook with fear, but she could not look away. This was not what she expected at all. The human had taken off his helmet. She could see his face now. He looked young, maybe the same age as her. His skin was pale like moonlight, and his hair was the color of tree bark. Most strange of all, his eyes looked sad and kind. Not hungry like a predator. Not cruel like the Korthak. The human sat on the floor and put a white box near her hiding spot. He spoke in a soft voice, trying different languages. When he used Galactic Standard, Zaralyn understood some of his words. He said he wanted to help. He said she was safe. Zaralyn pressed her hands over the glowing spots on her arms, trying to hide the blue light of her fear. But the light leaked through, her fingers anyway. Her people could not control their emotions the way other species could. Every feeling showed on their skin like a living rainbow. The human saw the blue glow. His eyes went wide with surprise, but not with hunger or greed. He looked curious and worried. "You're Velthari," the human said slowly in Galactic Standard. His accent was thick, but she could understand him. "I've heard about your people. The Korthak have been hunting you." Zaralyn's heart beat even faster. He knew what she was. He knew that her organs were valuable. Now he would grab her and sell her to the highest bidder. Or maybe humans really did eat other thinking beings like the stories said. But the human did not move toward her. Instead, he opened the white box and showed her what was inside. Medical supplies, bandages, healing gel, pain medicine, and other things she recognized from her work as a healer. "You're bleeding," the human said, pointing at the purple drops on the floor that led to her hiding place. "That looks bad. I can help fix it if you let me." Zaralyn touched the deep cut on her leg. It was getting worse every day. Soon it would get infected and she would die. But letting the human touch her would be letting him get close enough to grab her. The human seemed to understand her fear. He pushed the medical kit closer to her, and then moved back several steps. "You can take it," he said. "Fix yourself. I won't come any closer." Zaralyn stared at him. This made no sense. Why would he give her medicine? What did he want in return? In her experience, no one helped without wanting something back. The pain in her leg was getting worse. She had not eaten in 2 days and her body was too weak to heal itself. If she did not get help soon, she would die here on this cold metal floor. Very slowly, Zaralyn reached out from behind the computers. Her thin arm stretched toward the medical kit. The human stayed perfectly still, watching her with those strange, sad eyes. Her fingers touched the kit. The human did not grab her. She pulled it back to her hiding spot and opened it with shaking hands. Inside were things she recognized and things she did not. The bandages were similar to what her people used, but made from different materials. There was a small device that looked like it might clean wounds, and several tubes of medicine with pictures showing how to use them. Zaralyn looked at the human again. He was still sitting on the floor, not moving. He had his hands where she could see them, empty of weapons. "Go ahead," he said gently. "Take care of your wound. I'll just wait here." Zaralyn pulled up the torn fabric around her injured leg. The cut was deep and the edges were turning dark purple. It smelled bad, which meant infection was starting. She would need to clean it and seal it quickly. She found the wound cleaning device and turned it on. It made a soft humming sound and produced a blue light that she knew would kill germs. As she worked on her leg, she kept watching the human out of the corner of her eye. He did not try to get closer. He did not take pictures of her with his equipment. He just sat there quietly, sometimes looking at his hands or at the communication equipment around the room. When she made small sounds of pain, his face showed concern. This was all wrong. Humans were supposed to be monsters. They were supposed to hurt other people for fun, but this one was helping her and asking for nothing. In return, Zaralyn finished cleaning her wound and started applying the healing gel from the kit. It felt different from Velthari medicine, but it worked. The pain got less and she could feel the cut starting to close. "Better?" the human asked when she was done. Zaralyn nodded slowly. Her markings were still blue with fear, but not as bright as before. The human's communicator made a soft beeping sound. He pressed a button on his chest. "Morrison here," he said in his own language. A woman's voice came through the device, speaking too fast for Zaralyn to understand. The human answered in short sentences. Zaralyn caught a few words in Galactic Standard mixed in with his human language. When the conversation ended, the human looked at her again. "That was my captain," he said. "She wants to know if I found anything on the station." Zaralyn's markings flashed bright blue again. Now he would tell his people about her. They would come and take her away. But the human shook his head. I told her the station is empty, he said quietly. I did not tell her about you. Zaralyn stared at him in shock. He had lied to his own people to protect her. Why would he do that? The human reached into a pocket and pulled out a small device. He pressed some buttons and showed her the screen. It was playing a recording of voices speaking in the harsh language of the Korthak Empire. Zaralyn listened to the recording with growing horror. The Korthak were talking about hunting Velthari refugees. They mentioned prison ships and harvest quotas. They talked about her people like they were animals to be caught and butchered. When the recording ended, the human put the device away. I know what they did to your world, he said. I know what they're doing to your people. I fight against them too. For the first time since her escape, Zaralyn felt something other than fear. Hope. This human was an enemy of the Korthak. That made him, what? A friend? She tried to speak in Galactic Standard, but her voice came out as a whisper. Why do you help me? The human was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was full of sadness. Because it's the right thing to do, he said, and because I know what it's like to lose everything to the Korthak. Zaralyn saw pain in his eyes that matched her own. He had suffered too. He had lost people he cared about. Maybe the stories about humans were wrong. Maybe they were not all monsters. Maybe some of them were just people trying to survive in a galaxy full of darkness. The human stood up slowly, keeping his movements careful and non-threatening. I have food and water on my ship, he said. Real food, not just emergency rations, and I have better medical supplies. Would you like me to bring some here? Zaralyn looked at him for a long time. Every instinct told her not to trust him, but her body was weak and her spirit was tired of being afraid all the time. She nodded. The human smiled. It was a kind smile that reached his eyes. My name is Jake, he said. What's yours? Zaralyn, she whispered. It's nice to meet you, Zaralyn. I'll be back soon with supplies. You're safe now, I promise. As Jake walked toward the door, Zaralyn watched him go. Her markings were changing from blue to a soft yellow color. Yellow meant hope. For the first time in months, she thought she might actually survive. 3 days passed on the mining station. Jake kept his promise and returned with food, water, and better medical supplies. He had told Captain Hayes that he needed more time to search the station properly. It was another lie, but Jake did not feel bad about it anymore. Zaralyn was getting stronger. The human food was strange to her, but it filled her empty stomach. Jake brought her fruits that grew on human colony worlds and protein bars that tasted better than her emergency rations. He also brought clean water that did not taste like metal and recycling systems. Jake had made a comfortable sleeping area for her in the old medical bay. He brought soft blankets from his ship and even a small heater to keep her warm. Zaralyn had never expected such kindness from anyone, especially not from a human. The language barrier was getting easier too. Jake's suit computer could translate most of what they said to each other. Sometimes they had to use hand gestures or draw pictures, but they could have real conversations now. On the second day, Zaralyn learned about Jake's sister, Amy. Jake was eating his dinner while Zaralyn worked on fixing her torn clothes. He had given her a sewing kit from his ship's emergency supplies. As she stitched, she watched him look at a small picture on his communicator. Who is that? She asked in careful Galactic Standard. Jake looked sad when he showed her the picture. It was a young human woman with the same green eyes as Jake. She was smiling and holding a small human child. My sister, Amy, Jake said. She was a teacher on Harmony Colony. She taught little kids how to read and write. Zaralyn noticed he said was instead of is. What happened to her? Jake was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. Korthak raiders attacked the colony 2 years ago. They wanted to take people for slave labor. Amy tried to protect her students. She got all the children to the safe rooms, but she could not get out in time. Zaralyn felt her markings turn purple with sadness. Purple was the color her people showed when they felt pain for others. The Korthak killed her? She asked gently. Jake nodded. The whole school. 26 children and 4 teachers. Amy was 24 years old. She wanted to have her own children someday. Now Zara Lynn understood why Jake had helped her. He knew what it felt like to lose family to the Korthak. He knew the pain that she carried in her heart. "I am sorry," she said. "Your sister sounds like she was a good person." "She was the best person I knew," Jake said. "She always helped others, even when it was dangerous. I joined the military after she died. I wanted to fight back against the Korthak. But sometimes I wonder if fighting just makes more pain." Zara Lynn put down her sewing and looked at Jake carefully. "Helping me was not fighting. It was healing." Jake smiled a little. "Maybe you're right." On the 3rd day, Zara Lynn decided to trust Jake completely. She told him her own story while they shared breakfast in the medical bay. "I was a healer on my home world," she said. "My people have gifts that can fix injuries and cure sickness. I worked in the main hospital in our biggest city." Jake listened carefully while she talked. His suit computer translated her words, but sometimes she had to explain things that did not exist in human language. "The Korthak learned about our healing abilities," Zara Lynn continued. "They found out that our organs could make them live longer and stay young. So they came to our world with many ships and weapons." Her markings turned dark blue as she remembered. Jake reached out slowly and touched her hand. The contact made her feel less alone. "They killed most of my people quickly," she said. "But they kept the healers alive. They took us to prison ships and started cutting us open to see how our bodies worked." Jake's face became angry. "They experimented on you while you were alive?" Zara Lynn nodded. "They wanted to learn how to use our healing organs in their own bodies. I watched my teacher and my friends die on the cutting tables. I thought I would die too." "How did you escape?" "Human ships attacked the prison transport," Zara Lynn said. "There was a big battle, and the Korthak were too busy fighting to watch the prisoners carefully. I stole an escape pod during the confusion." Jake was quiet for a moment. "So humans saved you before I did?" "Yes, but I did not know that. The Korthak told us that humans were worse than they were. They said humans ate other thinking beings and destroyed worlds for fun." Jake laughed. But it was not a happy sound. "And what do you think now?" Zara Lynn looked at him seriously. "I think the Korthak lied about many things. You are nothing like the stories they told." That afternoon, something happened that changed everything between them. Jake was checking the station's defense systems when he slipped on some loose metal and fell hard. He cried out in pain and grabbed his left shoulder. Zara Lynn ran to help him. "What is wrong?" she asked. Jake was breathing hard and his face was pale. "Old injury. Shrapnel from my first battle with the Korthak. The doctors fixed most of it, but sometimes it still hurts." Zara Lynn could see he was in real pain. Without thinking, she put her hands on his shoulder. "Let me help," she said. Jake looked surprised. "You don't have to. Please. You have helped me so much. Let me help you too." Jake nodded slowly. Zara Lynn closed her eyes and let her healing gift flow through her hands. It had been months since she had healed anyone, but the ability was still there. The healing process was different with humans than with her own people. She had to work harder to understand how Jake's body was built. But slowly, she found the old scar tissue and the pieces of metal that the human doctors had missed. She worked. Something strange happened. Velthari healing involved sharing emotions and memories. She could feel Jake's pain, but also his kindness and his sadness about his sister. Jake could feel her fear and loneliness, but also her hope and gratitude. For a few minutes, they understood each other completely. When the healing was finished, Jake moved his shoulder carefully. The pain was gone completely for the first time in years. "How do you feel?" Zara Lynn asked. "Amazing," Jake said with wonder. "It doesn't hurt at all. Thank you." But Zara Lynn was looking at him strangely. During the healing, she had felt something in his mind. A memory of radio messages and ship positions. "Jake," she said slowly, Your captain is calling you back to the ship soon, is she not? Jake looked guilty. Tomorrow. There are reports of Korthak ships in this sector. We have to leave. Zara Lynn felt her markings turn blue again. She had known this time would end, but she was not ready. What will happen to me? She asked. Jake looked very sad. I don't know. I can't take you to my ship without explaining why I hid you. And I can't leave you here if the Korthak are coming. They both sat quietly, thinking about an impossible situation. Zara Lynn had started to feel safe for the first time in months. Jake had found meaning in helping someone instead of just fighting. Neither of them wanted this to end, but the galaxy was still dangerous, and tomorrow would bring new challenges that would test everything they had built together. Outside the station, in the darkness of space, ships were already moving toward them. The next day would change both their lives forever. Jake's communicator buzzed loudly, waking both him and Zara Lynn from sleep. It was early morning on the station, though in space there was no real day or night. Jake had been sleeping on the floor of the medical bay to stay close in case Zara Lynn needed help. Morrison, respond immediately, came Captain Hayes' urgent voice. Jake pressed the button quickly. Here, Captain. We have a problem. Long-range sensors show 3 Korthak warships heading for your position. They'll reach the station in 6 hours. Get back to the ship now. Jake felt his stomach drop. 6 hours was not much time. Understood. Captain, I'm on my way. Make it fast, Jake. We can't wait for you if those ships get too close. The communication ended, leaving Jake and Zara Lynn staring at each other in the dim light of the medical bay. Korthak ships, Zara Lynn said quietly. It was not a question. She had understood enough of the conversation. Jake nodded. 3 of them, big ones from what the captain said. Zara Lynn's markings turned pale blue, but not the bright blue of panic. She had been expecting this. Nothing good ever lasted long in her life. You have to go, she said. You cannot risk your ship for me. Jake stood up and started pacing around the small room. His mind was working fast, trying to find a solution that would save everyone. I can't just leave you here, he said. When the Korthak arrive, they'll search the station. If they find you, they will take me back to the harvest ships, Zara Lynn finished. I know. Jake stopped pacing and looked at her. Come with me. I'll tell Captain Hayes the truth. Maybe she'll understand. Zara Lynn shook her head sadly. Your military has rules. You lied to your commander to protect me. They will punish you. Maybe put you in prison. I don't care about that, Jake said. I do, Zara Lynn replied firmly. You saved my life. I will not let you destroy yours to save me again. They sat in silence for a few minutes, both thinking. Finally, Zara Lynn spoke again. Jake, I have something to tell you. I should have said it before, but I was afraid. Jake looked at her with concern. What is it? 3 days ago, when you first found me, I was trying to send a message to my people. I did send it before you came into the communication room. I was too scared to tell you because I thought you might leave me if you knew help was coming. Jake's eyes went wide. You contacted other Velthari? Are they coming here? Zara Lynn nodded. A rescue ship should arrive soon. My people have been searching for survivors like me. When they get my message, they will come. How soon? Jake asked. I do not know exactly. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Velthari ships are fast, but they have to be careful not to be seen by Korthak patrols. Jake felt hope and worry at the same time. If Zara Lynn's people came soon, she would be safe. But if the Korthak arrived first, everyone would be in danger. I have an idea, Jake said. But it's risky. He explained his plan to Zara Lynn. He would modify the station's defense systems to protect her until her rescue ship arrived. Then he would use his shuttle to create a distraction that would draw the Korthak ships away from the station. That is too dangerous, Zara Lynn said. 3 Korthak warships against 1 small shuttle, they will kill you. Not if I'm smart about it, Jake said. I won't fight them directly. I'll just make them chase me away from here. Once your people pick you up, it won't matter what happens to me. Zara Lynn grabbed Jake's arm. Her markings were flashing red with alarm. "It matters to me. You are my friend. My only friend in the whole galaxy." Jake put his hand over hers. "And you're mine. That's why I have to do this." They spent the next 2 hours working together to prepare the station. Jake showed Zaralyn how to use the defense systems and gave her all his extra food and water. He also left her his backup communicator so she could contact her rescue ship when it arrived. As Jake prepared to leave, Zaralyn touched his arm gently. "In my culture, we have a ceremony for people who risk their lives to protect others," she said. "Will you let me perform it for you?" Jake nodded. He did not know what to expect, but he trusted her completely now. Zaralyn placed both hands on Jake's forehead. Her markings began to glow with warm golden light. She spoke words in her own language that the translator could not handle, but Jake could feel their meaning through her touch. When she finished, there was a small golden mark on Jake's forehead that had not been there before. It looked like a star with gentle rays extending outward. "What does it mean?" Jake asked. "It marks you as Kethmiran, a guardian of the heart. It is the highest honor my people can give to someone who is not Velthari. It means you will always be welcome among us no matter where you go in the galaxy." Jake touched the mark gently. It felt warm under his fingers. "Will I see you again?" he asked. "I hope so," Zaralyn said. "But if not, I want you to know that you saved more than just my life. You saved my faith that good people still exist in this dark galaxy." Jake hugged her goodbye, being careful not to hurt her healing injuries. Then he picked up his equipment and walked toward the shuttle bay. As his shuttle launched from the station, Jake looked back through the window. Somewhere in that cold metal structure, a brave Velthari woman was waiting for rescue. He had done everything he could to keep her safe. An hour later, Jake's sensors detected the Korthak ships approaching. They were huge and ugly, covered in weapons and armor. Jake activated his plan and fired a missile at the nearest asteroid field. The explosion would look like mining activity to the Korthak sensors. The trick worked. All 3 Korthak ships turned toward Jake's position, thinking they had found a human mining operation. Jake led them on a chase through the asteroid field, staying just far enough ahead to avoid their weapons. Behind them, a graceful ship that looked like it was grown instead of built approached the mining station. The Velthari rescue vessel was beautiful, with smooth curves and a hull that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Jake smiled as he dodged another Korthak missile. Zaralyn was safe. That was all that mattered. 6 months later, Jake stood in a courtroom on Earth, waiting to hear his punishment for disobeying orders. He expected to be thrown out of the military in disgrace. Instead, the doors opened and a group of Velthari diplomats entered, led by a familiar figure with golden markings. Zaralyn walked up to the judge and spoke in perfect human language that she had been learning. "Your Honor, this human saved my life and protected me when I had nowhere else to turn. Because of his kindness, my people have agreed to share our healing knowledge with humanity. Lieutenant Morrison is not a criminal. He is a hero." The judge dismissed all charges against Jake. A week later, he was promoted and assigned as the first human ambassador to the Velthari Healing Collective. Jake's act of compassion had built a bridge between 2 species that would last for generations. And sometimes, late at night, when he looked up at the stars, he remembered a frightened refugee who taught him that kindness was the strongest force in the galaxy.